like to take a moment and introduce a couple new additions to the Drive Home Reviews family, to what I lovingly refer to as the film crew. First up, an old friend. So this is Grizabella. So Grizz was actually a gift many, many years ago. She used to ride on the dashboard of the Black Adder, back when the Black Adder was almost new. So she's fallen on some hard times. She's been shoved into back corners and whatnot, rediscovered. She's always had a little bit of bad luck, hence the name. But Drive Home Reviews and its subsequent series are nothing if not the haven for the unknown, the unwanted, and the unloved. A place for the second chance. So, Grizabella, welcome to the film crew. But especially joining us, I want to introduce you to this little fella, especially since we're doing This Is Halloween reviews. Say hello to Boobery. Now, Boobery was not one in a claw machine, as the majority of the crew here, but Boobery was a very special gift from a very special fandom, the one who sent me some of our new Halloween apparel. So, welcome to the crew, Boobery. So, ever since there has been horror movies, it seems like there has also been the subgenre of horror comedy. The concept of sticking scaredy cat characters into situations and locations where there was actually something to be afraid of and just letting them react has been a tried and true formula for years, from the Three Stooges trapped in a haunted house to Abbott and Costello being chased around by Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. It seems like this is a trend that has died out in recent years, and part of the theory, and I'm sorry to keep beating this dead horse, but I believe it's true. I think part of the reason for that is the only way this formula truly works is if the protagonist or protagonists, depending on who you're looking at, is in some way innocent. You know, in terms of emotional stance, their outlook on life and whatnot. They, in short, they need to have characteristics reminiscent of a child. If they don't, then the actual weight of it is lost, and there just aren't that many comedic characters these days who have that innocence. I'm not trying to rag on anybody. I'm just trying to say, you know, that's kind of the way it is. We've had a few attempts, and some of them have been pretty good, but for the most part, horror comedy falls into the realm of parody, which is not what these films are. They are still taking the monster and the threat seriously. And they are actually trying, in some cases, to be scary. Maybe not Friday the 13th scary, but still scary. And to do that, you need a character that can walk both lines. And there haven't been a lot of those. And in fact, one of the last was the great Jim Varney as Ernest P. Worrell here with Ernest Scared Stupid. Now, I've said this. I did a Forgotten Gems on Ernest Goes to Camp a few months back. So I've stated for the record my affection, my personal affection for the work of Jim Varney and the character of Ernest in, you know, specifically. I just love him. And I love him with that kind of knowledge that the movies are not the best. The jokes are often groaners, and some of the shtick is a little too shticky. But there is just something lovable and something endearing about Ernest to me as a character. You know, I don't know what. I don't know how to describe it. It's just something honest. It comes from a good place. And when you see his movies, even when the movies are not the best, I think that enjoyment and that desire to make people laugh and that genuine childlike quality comes out, and it makes up for a lot of the flaws. So when we're looking at Ernest Scared Stupid, what we're looking at is, in fact, the last Ernest theatrical release. Not the last Ernest movie. They made several others, but those would all be direct to video. For you young kids in the audience, that's essentially, you know, Netflix exclusives of their day. However, the difference is when you did a direct-to-video film, the general conception is that they were not going to be very good. They were, you know, lower in budget and whatnot. So this is kind of the last big screen adventure of Ernest, who had been a fairly steady hand throughout the 80s. His stuff was never huge, but it was popular enough to garner a certain amount of success for the actor and for the character. Ernest had 4 theatrical releases, and at the time this film was made, I believe, if I'm remembering my Ernest timeline correctly, there was an Ernest Saturday morning TV show, and I think a lot of the shtick and a lot of the stuff that goes on in this film is actually stuff kind of taken from that. It was almost like a movie version of his TV show, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a very long time since I watched the Ernest Saturday morning show, and to be honest, I didn't watch that many episodes of it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So what is the story of this film? So, in a town in Missouri many years ago, they're very vague on how exactly long ago this was, because when you see the opening, it almost looks like it's back in colonial times, but then when we finally join the action, it's, you know, what was then modern day, you know, 1991. But anyway, in colonial times, a troll has been terrorizing this small town in Missouri, where they finally catch it and do what you do with mythical creatures. You bury them underground and put a curse on them that they can only rise again if such and such a thing happens. Now, for me, if I ever catch a demonic entity, I don't think if I'm going to bind it, I'm ever going to put a clause in the contract that allows it to escape. I don't know why people in scary movies or, you know, Halloween-themed films do this all the time. I don't know if it's something from legal where they're contractually obligated to do it. But personally, if I catch the unearthly evil, I'm not putting in a clause where it can get out. That's just me. But, you know, that's me. I'm a different breed of cat. So at any rate, the priest who banishes the troll and locks him up is Ernest's great-great-grandfather, played also by Jim Varney. And of course, the caveat being that one of his descendants, we all know who that's going to turn out to be, will be the only one who can free the troll from his tomb. And when the troll comes back, the first thing he's going to do is he needs 5 children. He needs their souls in order to release his troll army, because, you know, that's a thing. So, flash forward to then present day 1991, and I think we can all guess what happens here. Ernest, through sheer buffoonery, accidentally releases the troll. The troll goes on a rampage, kidnapping children to release his unholy army, and Ernest has to save the day. So why does this film work? At least for me, and I know again, Ernest is an acquired taste, but for me, these Ernest films really do work. So why does this film work? I think, first of all, they have a unique and fun story, and they're having a good time with it. As mentioned with kind of horror comedies, or whatever you want to call them, you need the right balance. If you go too far in the shtick category, then it's just a parody. But if you go too far in the other direction, it's a horror film. So walking that line is actually very, very difficult. See, maybe I'll review this one for a Halloween review, but see kind of the classic horror comedy, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Yes, it's an Abbott and Costello movie, but it's not coming at it from the point of view of let's make fun of the Universal monsters. It's more coming at it from the view of what if, you know, Abbott and Costello were dropped into this horror movie world. So, and I think this film tries to follow very much in that film's footsteps. It's coming at it from the point of view of this is a family film. This is a family comedy. But it's still trying to be a Halloween film, and Halloween films have to be a little scary. And I think it does that fairly well. I mean, nothing in it's going to make you lose sleep, I don't think. But there are a few minutes, and I remember seeing this as a kid. There were a few minutes that were a little intense, and I remembered as a kid, you know, that concept of being chased by a troll. Or, I think one of the scariest things, which pops up in a lot of these movies, and works, again, very well in an Ernest film, is that concept of you knowing something is out of whack, but the adults in the room not believing you. You know, that's every kid's fear. That you're gonna something's gonna happen, and you're gonna try to tell people, but because you're a kid, they're not gonna listen. And here, that's even exasperated with, you know, Ernest himself being technically an adult and trying to warn people, and of course, because he's Ernest, nobody believes him. So I think the film walks its fine line very well. I also think that for a comedy, there are some fun action bits in here. There is a lot of fun set pieces in this movie that make it stand out. There's a great battle scene where the troll is fighting Ernest on the truck, and the battle goes like, and the truck is moving, and it's like all around and, you know, into the bed, and the dog is driving. So it's this really wonderfully thought out little scene. Again, comparatively to, like, you know, the subway scene in Spider-Man 2, yeah, it's nothing great. But, you know, for a movie like this, which you can tell is shot on the cheap, it's still pretty impressive. You also got to understand that, you know, the Ernest movies were never big budget affairs. I think that's why they were able to make so many of them, because they were cheap. They worked on the cheap. None of the sets or anything in this are that great. None of the actors are what you would call, you know, A-listers. The only kind of recognizable person here, aside from Varney, is the great Eartha Kitt. It's kind of the crazy old woman. You know the archetype. Every horror movie needs a doomsayer. You don't want to go open on that tray. That tray is the one with the trolls buried under. A lot of history on that tray. You know, that kind of character. And she plays the crazy old witch woman who knows the history of the troll and kind of teams up with Ernest to help him out. And of course, it's Eartha Kitt, so it's fucking fantastic. And she and Jim Varney have some fun chemistry. It's nothing too big. Their scenes are not really that long. But she plays a good straight man to him and gives him something else to react off to. Jim Varney is very good at overblown and comedic reactions. It was one of his and the Ernest character's true hallmarks. Yeah, but none of the actors here are what you would call, you know, big names. I don't think most of them have names. I was looking at IMDb. Most of their IMDb pages don't even have profile pictures. So you're not getting, like, the high end. This is kind of one step above community theater. Not that there's anything wrong with community theater. I work in community theater. But you're not getting kind of the best actors here. Another thing Varney has always done very well in 3 out of 4 of his movies is the inclusion of younger characters for him to work off of. Jim Varney, kind of like Jim Candy, did a lot of his best work when he had young co-stars. You know, and I think it's always funny when, you know, this man-child, this idiot, has to kind of play, you know, best friend / surrogate father to these kids when he himself, you know, is too much of a child, and they kind of have to grow up to kind of take care of him. The kid actors in this are not too bad, and they have some good chemistry with Jim Varney. Nothing really to talk about there. They're decent. I do have to say that one thing you got to give this film a lot of props for is the troll himself is pretty impressive. Basically a large animatronic head on a little person actor who's running around, doing this kind of thing. The head is pretty detailed and pretty impressive. The only thing I kept thinking as I was rewatching it is that I felt sorry for the poor actor because the head, first of all, is very large. And secondly, to get all the animatronics and everything up there, especially back then, that must have been incredibly heavy and must have been pushing down on the neck a lot. So it must have been a fairly uncomfortable suit for the actor inside of it. But the animatronics are still pretty impressive. When he does release the troll army, I will say that they are a little bit more on the cheap side. They're not as good. They're not as, but again, this is not a high budget picture. So I think for what they had to work with, they did fairly well. Another standout moment in this, I mentioned that Varney was doing the Ernest Saturday morning show, and one of the hallmarks of that is he would go and play all of these different characters. Of course, he'd done that in some of the other Ernest movies, like he played the old lady who was a standout. People really loved it. My mom always loved it when he played the old lady. But he had other characters, none of whom had names, I don't think. They were just, the centurion, the soldier, the British guy, I don't know what they call it. He does one woman, very 90s woman. But I think he did that a lot on the show. He'd do whole segments where he'd switch back and forth between characters, and they'd all kind of have conversations. And they brought that in this, and that's a standout. It really does show kind of the range Varney had and just how funny he really could be. The scenes don't make a lot of sense, but it really doesn't have to. It's there more for just for comic relief, and it works really well. I also got to say, as we kind of wrap this up, not a lot. It's always, as I've said millions of times, it's hard to review a comedy. I like how this film kind of reaches its climax, how it ends. Spoiler alert, because we all know Ernest is going to win in the end. The troll can only be defeated by, the heart of a child and a mother's love. So milk is kind of the mother's love. You're throwing milk at them and they blow up. But then the troll becomes all-powerful and milk's not going to work, so the only thing left is the heart of a child, which Ernest has, meaning that Ernest has to defeat the troll not with brute force, but by showing it love. And that is not only just kind of a neat switch, but it's a switch that plays very well into the strengths of the Ernest character. Again, that earnestness, that honesty, and that, even though he's a blowhard and even though he's egotistical and he makes all these weird statements, that fact that Ernest is at his heart a good person, and all of everything he does is motivated by being a good person and wanting to do the right thing. I think that's just some clever writing. I'm not going to say it's award-winning writing, but it's a clever twist that works with the character. I don't know kind of what else to get into with this. Again, these comedies, especially these, I'll be honest, these kind of middling comedies, these ones that are very much a product of their time and a little dated. This isn't a comedy Halloween classic or anything like that. But it's still really enjoyable. It is still, again, if you have a younger kid, especially, one that likes Halloween but maybe doesn't like the scariness, I think this is a good film. And I still think that despite kind of the justifiable annoyance people can have with Ernest as a character, there's still something there to like. He's still likable. You know? I still really love Ernest. And even though watching these movies back, yeah, they don't hold up as well, but revisiting the Ernest films is like revisiting an old friend. And Ernest Scared Stupid being his last big screen Ernest adventure, I think it was a good way to go out. Paid homage to the comedy geniuses that had come before, and maybe in its own way etched Varney his own little place in that list. Maybe not at the top, but I think he deserves to be mentioned more than he is. So thank you, Jim Varney. Thank you for the laughter that you gave us and the characters that you created. Maybe nobody said it, and maybe nobody has, but you were good, and you were enjoyed, and your stuff still resonates. So here's to you, Jimmy. Ew. So, again, not much to really say about Ernest Scared Stupid. Fun little Halloween film. Go check it out if you haven't already. I think it lightens up the holidays. So, thank you very much for joining us. And there are many more thrills and chills and scares to come. So, until next time, as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.